Hello everyone, and welcome back to another world building video for the Player's Guide to Ravion, kind of Ravion world setting. In this video, we're going to look at some of the smaller regions within the Libet Empire. This video, we're actually talking about the Greenhollow Plains. In contrast to the Stone Teeth, which we talked about last time, the Greenhollow Plains is a region that's extremely seasonally influenced, as opposed to just almost always being cold and high in the air and for mountains and everything like that. So, we'll take a look at the map in a second, but the basic thing to know as you look at it is that the Greenhollow Plains, being seasonal, is very kind of dynamic. Much of the territory is snow-covered and frozen during the winter, but then turns into rich and vibrant grasslands in the summer. The people of the region that benefit from this seasonal transition period is that it affords them this fertile growing season with plenty of resources to thrive, but then a winter season that they must prepare for. The Greenhollow Plains are wide and dotted with various timberlands that hold a variety of animals within them. So basically, from a geological standpoint, this is like the standard I live in a fantasy setting. This, for the most part, is going to be kind of this northernmost region here, just above the Gemlock Sea, and just below this mountain range. It'll include the cities like Ocean's Cut, Limeacre, Still Hollow, other places like this. This Greenhollow Plains type area is going to hold quite a few different people and populations and cultures. It's going to be extremely influenced for farmland, and as rich farmland, the people that live here are going to be leaning into the fact that they have the full growing season, but they don't have the full year round to be able to produce food. So they're going to have quite a bit of farmland, quite a bit of livestock, other creatures, and lots of structures to allow them to maximize their production during the on season, and then prepare and take a second to lean into like storage and pickling and other things to be able to survive the winter off of the resources that they have collected. This means that even then, cities like Limeacre, Still Hollow, and other cities within the region, that while they can benefit from, to some extent, the trade that would come through Ocean's Cut, they tend to be relatively self-sufficient, or at the very least as much as possible. Knowing that the Libet Empire is, to some extent, kind of an issue for most of the global politics. Most of the other nations in Ravion don't typically appreciate the meddling that the Libet Empire does. They need to be relatively self-sufficient, at least to some extent, to be on the safe side, to make sure that if something were to happen, they can afford to not have trade coming through. And so that isn't a necessarily primary like means of survival for them to actually have this trade port. But other regions, other cities within the region, and other settlements within the region are able to produce everything that they need on their own. So, taking a look more into the regional nodes, the Greenhollow Plains, as the region does hold this large population of citizens, was once a vast territory of loose, segregated individuals. Their own communities that the region had were once again relatively tribal or insular in nature. They had their own kind of almost like a tribal nation, that was what they had as their structure. That was their lifestyle. They would interact, they might cooperate, but for the most part, they actually had some individual goals and individual groups. So what ended up happening is, once again, with the Stone Teeth, they ended up having the Libet Collective come through and slowly assimilate them into kind of under this, banner of the Divine Trinity of the Holy there. They ended up having the Hands of the Holy Triad lean in for those different groups. Kind of before it was officially the Hands of the Holy Triad, they ended up saying, you know what, yes, let's get this kind of this area developed and unified. And they did so with otherwise normal means, political endeavors, but then also support. they ended up surprisingly being, for the Libet Empire, supportive of these smaller nations, helping to broker peace treaties, helping to take it upon themselves to provide medical aid and other things that they may need, and other sorts of things that, resources that the Libet Collective had been producing or able to take on, given their actual status, that smaller groups were not necessarily able to do on their own. So, the kind of area within the Greenhollow Plains ended up being a slow, gradual, but on the geological timescale or everything there, kind of a relatively rapid change from a tribal independent community to a part of the Libet Collective, because the incentive to be a part of this collective was extremely high. It was just going to be much more beneficial to be a part of it. And so they kind of slowly agreed over time, over maybe a decade's worth of time, which is relatively quick from a political standpoint there. They did turn from their old gods to lean into the structures for kind of the Libet Collective, to kind of turn from, okay, these people must have something a little bit better, so to speak, if that's what they, if these people can help us out. But for the most part, the structures for their old gods are still there. And there are different forms of chapels and shrines and holy sites that are left unattended or relatively moderately repurposed for worship of one of the three approved deities. So if you were going to walk through the area, you may find yourself walking through, or walking through the woods, or finding the stand of trees, and then finding that there's like a whole chapel that's been left to disarray within that stand of trees. And you can find out what god or goddess it was for and try to figure out the history and lean into that piece of things. For why did this change? What happened? Oh, we don't worship them anymore. How does this feel? What's going on? Are the bodies that may be interred around it upset that their descendants have turned from their god? Stuff like those kinds of things. You can have spiritual influence around the area, and a few different other options. Otherwise, the creatures of the Greenhollow Plains are typically large migratory species. They do end up traversing from the northern edges of the Greenhollow Plains in the summer to the southern Riverlands region in the winter. I'll show you on the map here. This being the Greenhollow Plains, kind of north of the Gemlock Sea. Down here, kind of along this edge, and then back more so from the mountain area down near the Libet Empire's New Libet City, the capital, ends up being kind of the Riverlands. So they, in the summer, go north to be able to kind of avoid the heat that the desert area provides and take advantage of the resources that are growing there in the northern kind of, Greenhollow region. But then they turn, and go south for the winter when it becomes too harsh of a landscape. They move in large herds, and they are a resource. And so migratory species that do leave the area for the winter can be quickly, harvested, so to speak, or hunted to support the communities around them, should it be necessary. Otherwise, there are others that do remain year-round and hibernate through the winter chill, but it does depend kind of on the different species that you're looking for. If you have a very large, something like a bison, so to speak, they may be able to weather the winter on their own from their thick and woolly kind of fur. But you could also very easily say, you know what? No, these guys are going to actually go south because it just is not that far. And they might as well, that kind of thing. So that is the Greenhollow Plains. Thank you all for watching. In the next video, we'll take a look at the Riverlands in more detail. But for now, thank you all for watching. Remember, be good to one another, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.